Here we go to our last lesson before our review for 3.7, the sum and product of the quadratic roots. Our objective for today is that students will be able to use the sum and product of quadratic roots to write a quadratic equation. So as you remember from the previous lessons, a quadratic formula, the solution to a quadratic equation that's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, assuming that a is not equal to 1, is by this quadratic formula x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, everything over 2a. So as a consequence of this result, remember we always split it up because of this plus and minus right here. In that case, we have one root that is always minus b minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a and minus b plus. So in this case, we have the minus and the plus that comes from up here. Now, what we're going to talk about today, we will find and use the relationship between the sum and the products of these roots. So the first example says, find the expression, and remember what's an expression? It's without an equal sign, for the sum and product of the two quadratic roots in terms of a, b, and c. Place your answer in the box. So the first thing I want to do is find the sum of x1 plus x2, which is my x1 is right here and my x2 is right here. And then b says I want to find the product of x1 and x2. So what I want to do is, I actually did it already for you. So the sum is I'm taking x1 and x2 together and I'm adding them. So we can combine them, make it one denominator since it's all 2a. Then I just cancel my square root because one's plus and one is minus, and I'm left with minus b over 2a, which gives me minus 2b over 2a, and I can divide both terms by 2, and I am left with the sum being minus b over a. If I work the product out, I will end up with multiplying everything. Multiply across, multiply at the bottom. 2 times 2 is 4. A times a is a squared. You multiply the top, you're left with this, b squared minus square root of b squared minus 4ac squared. I simplify all of that. I end up with b squared minus b squared plus 4ac. My b squares are canceled. I'm left with 4ac over 4a. I cancel my 4. I take an a out, and I am left with c over a. Now, why are we doing this? You will find out in just about a minute. So, what I want to write is that the sum and product of the roots of a quadratic are always going to be the sum, and this is what you need to know, minus b over a from up here, and then the product is always c over a. So the quadratic formula is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So how is this to the sum and the product related to our quadratic formula? So all you need to remember is that the coefficient, my b term, is always going to be the negation of the sum, meaning if the sum is a negative, it will be a positive. If it's a positive, it will be a negative, the opposite. Negation means, another word for negation is opposites. And the product of the roots, which is the c over a, is always going to be the constant term c. So the sum is minus b over a, and the product is c over a. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to write my formula. The sum is minus b over a, and the product is C over A, just so that I have that ready to go. For each of the following equations, state the sum and product of their roots. So A is 2, B is 8, and C is negative 3. So the sum is minus B over 2, which is the same as negative 4. That's my sum. And the product is negative 3 over 2. That's it. This is my product. That's my sum. What about this one over here? B. My A is 5. My C is 2. And my B is 2 and my C is negative 20. So the sum is minus B over A. That cannot be simplified. And my product is C, which is negative 20, over 5, which simplifies to negative 4. And that's it. That's your product, that's your sum. So what you need to remember is these formula that I'm highlighting right here. Moving on to number 3, and this is pulled from a Regents question. A quadratic equation has a root that is the sum of 5 and the product of a negative 3. Which of the following could be the equation? So we said the sum represents what? Go back to your notes at the bottom if you're not sure. The sum is the second term. The B term is always the negation. That's your sum right here. So the sum represents your B term, and it has to be negated, meaning negation. It has to be the opposite. So since it's a positive 5, you know your B term is going to have a negative 5. And then the product represents your constant term or your C term. So you know it's going to be a minus 3 as a C term, and the B term, which is here, it's a positive 5. I have to negate that to be a negative 5. So the quadratic equation would be choice 2. X squared minus 5x minus 3. Which of the following quadratic equation has a root of x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 7? So before I can even do that, I need to know the sum. I need to know the product. So again, how am I going to get the sum? The sum would have to be 5 plus square root of 7, and then 5 minus square root of 7. Remember, this is one root, and this is another. And then the product would be 5 plus square root of 7 times 5 minus square root of 7. So what I'm going to do is show you the easy way to do this on the calculator. So get your calculator. I'm going to go get mine. So now that I have my calculator, you should have yours. So I'm going to go to calculate. The first thing I want to do is find the sum. So the sum was, first was 5 plus radical 7. Close my parentheses. Plus my second root was, I'm going to open my parentheses, 5 minus the square root of 7. Close parentheses, enter. So I got that the sum as 10. Now let's find the product. So that's the sum. I want to get the product now. So I'm going to do the same thing. 5 plus square root of 7. Come out. Close your parentheses, times, oops, I didn't open my parentheses, 5 minus square root of 7, close parentheses. So 18 is my product. Let's write that over here. So my product is 18, and my sum was 10. Now that I have these two, so I know when I'm writing my quadratic, it will have a negative 10x plus an 18. And we know that's choice 1. Why is it negative 10? Remember, the sum is always the opposite. And this is my b term, and the product is my c term. Write a quadratic equation that could have roots sum to 9 and have a product of 6. So sum 2 equals 9, product equals 6. So it's going to be x squared, the opposite of my sum, which is minus 9x plus 6. Oh, not plus c, plus 6. That is my c term, but my product represents my c term, equals 0. And this is my quadratic formula. Now we have a few more. Find the equation of a quadratic formula if its leading coefficient is 3 and it has a rational x-intercept of that. So again, this goes with what's my sum, what's my product. So my sum is 4 plus square root of 3 plus 4 minus square root of 3. What is this equal to? My product will be the same thing, but now I am multiplying them. So plug that in your calculator and tell me what you got. Great, so this will be 8 and this will be 13. So normally when I will write this, I would write this as x squared minus 8x plus 13. Okay, I will write y equals. Now the question says my leading coefficient is 3. So now I need to multiply everything by 3. So my final would be 3x squared minus 24x plus 39. So from here to here, I times it by 3, multiply by 3 because I was told my leading coefficient is 3. Okay, so in green here, this is my final answer. I'm sorry, this is 39. Okay, so let's go with one more. Find the equation of a quadratic function that has a root of this and a y-intercept of -2. So again, I'm looking for something in the form ax squared plus bx plus, ooh, not bc, bx plus c. Your y-intercept of 2, this means it is the c term, or as we just learned, it's the product. So I don't need to find the product. What I need to do is find the sum. So the sum is 3 plus radical 10 plus 3 minus square root of 10. What is this equal to? So this will give me a 6, and let's check our product. So I know that I have to get a product of -2, which is my c term. So when I do the product, I do 3 plus square root of 10 times 3 minus square root of 10. You plug that in your calculator, you will get -1. So again, if I was to write this in regular form, I will write y equals x squared minus 6x minus 1. But the question asked me for a y-intercept or a c term of -2. So how do I get from -1 to -2 is multiplying everything by 2. So when I multiply here, and I'm just going to write it times 2, I get y is equal to 2x squared minus 12x minus 2. And this in red is my final answer. Why did I multiply by 2? Because I need to go from a -1 to a -2. 8 says, what is the quadratic equation if the sum of the roots is -4 and the product is -11? So the sum is -4 and then the product is -11. So remember, the sum will give you your, once I negate it, I will get the B term, and then the product will be my C term. So if I was to write this out, y equals x squared. So this is -4. This becomes a positive 4x minus 11, and that's my quadratic formula. Normally, these are a multiple choice question on the regions. Alright, so my final word of advice is that you need to be careful. What is your leading coefficient like we've seen up here? What is your y-intercept, which is your C term or your product? So remember how to find the sum and the product. Last thing to remember is that your sum is always what? Go back to your first page. Minus b over a, and then my product is always going to be c over a. Alrighty guys, wrap up 3.7, and then that's the final lesson for Unit 3. I know you can do this.